Hi, my name is Osagie Igbeare, and this is my presentation on wearable technology. So I'd like to start kind of with the history and the origins of wearable technology. A lot of it comes out of research done at MIT by Thad Starner and Steve Mann. Starner's research was more practical, whereas Steve Mann's was more philosophical. Along those lines, he kind of developed these operational modes of wearable technology. And the important thing about looking at this aspect of wearable technology, its origins, is that I feel by looking at its origins and its beginnings, it will really allow us to develop a very useful framework to assess the current wearable technology devices that are coming out and also assessing the future devices that will come out. And so the operational modes, there are three of them there: augmentation, mediation, and personal. Augmentation, the computer should serve to augment the intellect or the senses. Mediation, the wearable computer serves as this interface with untrusted systems. And personal. This quote here says, this technology, if you give it a sinister twist, could bring totalitarian control beyond anything Orwell imagined. I want smart clothing, owned, operated, and controlled by individual wearers. And there's a link there with more research on Starner and Mann, which I highly recommend. Really great stuff there. This is an example of basically an early heads-up display from Bell Labs. That was actually in that link in the last slide. And so this is an engineer from Bell Labs, and so this is around the 60s or 70s. And in the link, there's a video that I pulled this picture from. But this engineer actually, as a personal project, developed these basically embedded LEDs in his glasses because he had hearing problems. And so basically, what the LEDs would do is that they would overlay on somebody's lips, and when the person would say a vowel, the LEDs would shine one color. When they would say a consonant, they would shine another color, something along those lines. But what's interesting is that that was the basis of the technology that they would then use for heads-up displays in fighter pilot helmets. Really fascinating example of wearable technology way before Google or Apple. I mean, frankly, way before many of us were born. So Bell Labs, really an engineer being able to crank that out is fascinating there. Some of the current players in wearable technology, you've got Pebble, you've got Sony, you've got Google Glass. Pebble, really fascinating story. Raised over $10 million on Kickstarter and raised $15 million Series A. Sony came out with their smartwatch 2 within the past couple of years, and Google Glass, something everybody's pretty familiar with. And the more current players, you've got Samsung with their Gear, you've got the Apple Watch. So this is actually a rendering, of what people thought the watch would look like before the Apple Watch was released. And interestingly enough, Microsoft, which announced, their wearable band, their device is more of a band, whereas Apple's is more of a watch. So it's kind of interesting that, kind of those two with Apple and Microsoft were the projections of what people thought they would be. And you kind of see it's actually been switched, where Apple's is more of a watch, and as I said, Microsoft is more of a band. Kind of a word on the companies kind of being engaged here, and here I focus on Apple and Google, but this really applies to any company really wanting to go into wearable tech. I think even Intel developed a smartwatch. But the thing with wearable technology is, as fascinating as a field as it is, a lot of companies really need to take a step back and ask them, is this really the field I should go into? Basically because, Apple's a great example. At their core, they understand industrial design and hardware. Even though they actually tend to lag in regards to software. A lot of their data architecture and a lot of their data structures is not as efficient or as contemporary as say someone like Google's. And Google, for instance, they're a software company at their core. Great innovations with their software product, but historically they've struggled with physical products. So this is a type of thing where you take a step back as a company and realize, hey, what is a wearable technology play? Is that really within our wheelhouse? And so those are the current companies. Those are basically who's now. Now let's take a look at who's next. So with respect to the startups, it's a really exciting time. Basically, $570 million has been invested in wearable technology, according to CB Insights. What's interesting is that 2/3 of that figure come from Jawbone and GoPro. So there's still so much room to grow. There's one really interesting startup called called Thalmic Labs, and they develop a product called Mayo. So basically, that band you see there, you actually slip that on your forearm, and what it does is that it picks up on the microelectric pulses that occur naturally as you move your hand. By doing that, they're able to delineate which gestures you kind of contorted and did with your arm, with your hand, with your fingers, and translate that to some type of command for the paired device. So I'd encourage you to look deeper into that. Really cool stuff. And you can see there again golf, and then another startup there. And at Telepathy One, actually, they actually did a pivot. I'm not even sure if they're around still, but they are. They did a pivot actually away from the wearable that you see there, which looks close to the Google Glass. So wearable technology, it's a broad field, but it actually can be sliced into kind of 5 neat categories: augmented reality, health and fitness, brain monitoring, controlled computing, point of view. And there are startups in each of these. So with augmented reality, you've got Oculus Rift, you've got Google Glass, personal display. Pebble is in here because of the personal display. Health and fitness, you've got Fitbit, you've got Jawbone. Brain monitoring, you've got BrainBot, NeuroSky, controlled computing, Ophthalmic Labs, and also interaction. Interaction is interesting because Ashton Kutcher has actually invested in them. And a point of view with GoPro. And so the investors in WearableTech, and these are just a few of them, but you got Khosla, which is down the street on Sandhill, Mayfield Fund. They actually have a fellowship here at Stanford, the Mayfield Fellowship, and True Ventures and a few others there. So with respect to the profitability of the market, IMS Research, they really expect the market to exceed $6 billion by 2016. Juniper Research really claims that the next-gen wearable device market will exceed 1.5 billion this year. And so the jury's still out whether or not they were correct in that. But either way, that guesstimate is up $800 million from 2013. Credit Suisse really projects a $30 to $50 billion market in 3 years, and this may be an overestimation. It really hinges on Google and Apple's success. And quite frankly, the Google Glass has struggled, and even the Apple Watch. Even though I mentioned that the hardware was Apple's kind of wheelhouse and their forte, the Apple Watch was really underwhelming. I personally thought, and wasn't overly well received. And so that it's a question as to whether or not the $30 to $50 billion mark will actually manifest in 3 years. But with all these things with wearable technology, the thing that a lot of people don't consider is that that's really just the applications of wearable technology. Really what's going to drive the industry and what's going to drive this field are really kind of the enabling technologies, the foundational technologies. You can call them bottlenecks. Basically battery technology, sensor capabilities, and also through in fashion there, which I'll explain when I get to it. So with the battery breakthroughs, there's a company called Prologium in Taiwan. Basically, they manufacture an FLCB, so basically an ultra-thin battery. They've got an FTB, which is a FPC thin battery, and they combine that with a lithium ceramic battery. It's one of the few lithium chemical batteries that adopts FPC as a battery substrate. The FLCB adopts a solid-like electrolyte, which is a lithium ceramic, enabling an ultra-safe component in addition to good electrical performance. So even after folding, cutting, penetrating, burning even, and other types of deformation, the FLCB doesn't leak or catch fire or explode. That link there, that's a link to a video where you can actually see a reporter taking some scissors to it, and this is not a video, it's just kind of an image from that video. A reporter taking some scissors to it, and it still turns on those LEDs. So really fascinating in terms of what's going on with battery technology there. Here is just a kind of a chart on different models of that battery, and here the one thing I want to note out is just the thickness, 0.35 millimeters. Right? So ultra thin, and because it's thin, it can really be flexible, and that allows a world of opportunity, not only for wearable technology but other industries. And you see that in their product roadmap here. They've got wearable electronics, but they've also got storage, tablets, electric vehicles. And there's a lot going on with that. Apple actually released a flex battery patent. A lot the design constraint of the battery is well known, and there's a lot of research and a lot of technology going into really trying to optimize that and improve that. A startup actually in this space is Imprint Energy. They're actually based right across the bay in Alameda in the East Bay, and essentially how it works. It's based upon zinc instead of lithium ion, and the importance of that is lithium ion is extremely reactive with the atmosphere environment, which is why batteries are so thick, because a lot of that is just casing to protect the lithium. Because theirs is based upon zinc, their batteries can be made thinner. In fact, it can be as thin as a few hundred microns. And the secret sauce of their technology is something called zinc poly. You can kind of read this, or maybe you've been reading it as I've been talking. But zinc, if you try and use it in a battery situation, basically thins will form called dendrites, which are tiny fibers that grow and get in the way of their charging reaction. So Imprint Energy solved this hurdle by developing something called zinc poly. So it's a zinc-based polymer that is safe with the environment, but I guess the dendrite issue has been mitigated or even solved. I'm not really sure. Again, it's their secret sauce. And so going on to the fashion sensibilities. So again, this isn't really a technological bottleneck, but this is something that is very important with wearable technology. Because of the, I guess, interesting intersection of technology and fashion, wearable tech really allows for this really unique collaboration between the tech and fashion industries. You see in this infographic here, basically, and this was, I pulled this down a few years ago from July 2013. Was when I kind of had access to this infographic, but still very telling, and maybe even a forecast of kind of Google Glass's struggles. But you see there, people ask, if they were affordable, would you buy Google Glass? 25% of guys would, 11% of girls would. Would you feel too self-conscious? That prime demographic of 18 to 24, 25 to 34. 25% say yes, 22% say yes, and the 25 to 34 demographic. So you see from this infographic a lot of the struggles already being able to be forecasted, or excuse me, a lot of the struggles with Google Glass really already being on the wall, already being kind of on the horizon when you look at this infographic. And so further on, fashion experts are saying that fashion is an important factor. It's one way to drive acceptance. And the last thing you want is a device that's geeky looking. That's from Christian Tubito. And Francesca Rosella says Google Glass is asking us to change the way we look on a daily basis. The idea is great, but I would have done something cooler for the interface. When I see photos of friends that use it, there's this line in front of their eyes. It looks weird. And she later went on to say, every time I see someone wearing it, it reminds me of the MIT Media Lab cyborgs. Those are those guys in the bottom right. MIT Media Lab, you want to follow their research and their work. You don't want to look like them. And that's harsh, but that's the reality. And I think the interesting thing about wearable technology is that it really brings technology to the space it's never existed in before. It's not just a device that works. When we put on clothes, we're very intentional about that because we're intentional about the way we want to present ourselves to the outer world. And if technology is going to be wearable, that same paradigm will extend to it. And so this thing about fashion is less about superfluous aesthetics and is really a fundamental part about what it will take for not only the industry to kind of take off, but also for products in the industry to really become hits. And there's another quote on WearableTech kind of at the end there. Another aspect of kind of the enabled technologies or enabling factors or sensor fusion algorithms, basically just to summarize, it allows the sum of the parts to be greater than the parts themselves. So for instance, you can, through algorithms, you can kind of take the outputs from disparate sensors into a more meaningful set of factors that you can kind of send further down the line toward the microprocessor or microcontroller. And so what's interesting about this is that, this opens up a wide variety of functional applications. And here, this is just a kind of a graphics. This is an example of STM Microelectronics 9-axis sensor fusion engine, the iNeMo. But I mentioned the wide slew of functionalities that can be kind of achieved with sensor fusion algorithms, and one of them is context awareness. Kind of reading off this quote here, biomechanical rhythms of humans are very distinctive from the vibrations and movements of a car. Consequently, context-aware algorithms can distinguish whether a phone is being carried or is not on a person from the characteristics of the motion patterns that the sensors record. And so that's just one example of it. And the possibilities can really be far-reaching with that. And one of the interesting things with this is that kind of in the third quote in the top section there, it mentions how for context awareness to really be viable, it really requires power-conscious architectural foundation because the device would always need to be on. So one of the other breakthroughs I haven't really talked about, I kind of touched on it a little bit with batteries, but really it's that the power storage. Or power architecture. That's another breakthrough, another enabling technology that WearableTech really rides upon. And in addition to the other two you see there, with low energy data transfer and sensor fusion algorithms. Another aspect of wearable technology that we really don't think about because it's not in the news a lot is actually e-textiles. So there's actually a textile nanotechnology laboratory in Cornell, and they're doing really amazing things. They've actually made a solar-powered dress, and you see in that quote there from Juan Hinestroza, we're developing transistors comprised of cotton, so the electronics will not be attached to the textile. The textile will be the electronic device. So fascinating with what they're trying to do there. Another example of that is from a company called Heapsalon. This actually spun out of the research from someone in UCLA, and they created this smart sock called Sensoria. The sock is laden with sensors to tell people about their stride, about their gait, and about their speed, and they released an Indiegogo campaign. And so you see there's different facets to wearable technology, and as exciting as it is, as I mentioned earlier on in this presentation, there are a lot of enabling technologies that really dictate not just how far wearable technology can go, but will also dictate how successful the products are that do arise in that industry. So this was the WearableTech presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and enjoy your night. Peace.